Level 1. The pick. Your supervisor calls you into his office on a Thursday afternoon and closes the door. He doesn't sit down. He slides a folder across the desk. He says, deep cover. Mid-level organized crime crew. Connected higher than they look. 4 years of conventional work got us nowhere. The only way in is a person. He looks at you. He says, we think that's you. You open the folder. You study it. He says, it means you won't have a life. Not your real one. Different name, different history, different apartment. You tell your family you're on extended assignment. Nothing else. He pauses. He says, one thing before you answer. The person you build is going to feel real eventually. That is not a warning. That is the job. If the cover doesn't feel real to you, it will never feel real to them. You close the folder. You say yes. He nods. He does not look particularly relieved. Level 2. The cover. Your name is Danny Moran. You grew up in South Boston. Father was a longshoreman. You did 2 years at a community college and dropped out. You have a juvenile record for assault, real court documents, real case number, real judge's signature on a dismissal. The record is real. The events behind it are constructed. You spend 6 weeks building Danny Moran before you ever put him on. You practice his walk. Not dramatically, just slightly heavier on the left foot, a posture that carries a different center of gravity than yours. You practice his voice. Same accent you already have, slightly flattened. The specific verbal rhythm of a man who grew up around docks and bars and never quite left that world behind. You study his history until it is faster than your own. Where he went to school. The teacher whose class he failed junior year. The bar he drinks at. His mother's maiden name. The scar on his left forearm from a kitchen accident when he was 12. The scar is real. You put it there yourself. Not deeply. Just enough to be there when someone looks. You move into an apartment in a neighborhood adjacent to the crew's territory. You establish Danny Moran's daily patterns. The diner where he eats breakfast. The bar where he drinks. The gym where he trains. You live these patterns for 3 weeks before anyone from the target organization sees you. Because the cover has to pre-exist the introduction, the night before first contact you lie in Danny Moran's apartment, on Danny Moran's bed, and you look at the ceiling for a long time. You are 31 years old. You are. For the first time in your adult life, you genuinely do not know which name belongs to the face looking up at that ceiling. Level 3. The door. The introduction happens through a guy named Carmine, who doesn't know he is the introduction. Carmine is a mid-level associate who drinks at the same bar you have been drinking at for 3 weeks. You have had brief conversations, sports, neighborhood complaints, normal bar talk. You have been careful to be memorable in small ways and invisible in important ones. One night, 2 men from the crew come in and sit at the bar. A situation develops, not engineered by you, genuinely accidental, where you are standing next to Carmine when one of the men says something to him that requires a response. And Carmine is not the kind of man who responds well under pressure, and you say the right thing at the right moment in the right tone. Nothing dramatic. 4 words. The kind of thing a man who grew up around this world says automatically without thinking about it. One of the 2 men looks at you. He asks Carmine who you are. Carmine says, Danny. Good people. The man extends his hand. His name is Ray. You shake it, and in that handshake you feel something that your training did not fully prepare you for. Ray means it. There's nothing transactional in that handshake. He is genuinely welcoming someone he has decided is worth welcoming. He has no idea what you are. He is just a man extending a hand to another man he has decided he likes. You smile, you say, good to meet you, Ray. You mean it. That is the first problem. It is the year. Level 4. The tests. They never announce they are testing you. That is the point. 3 weeks after meeting Ray, you are invited to a card game at the back of a restaurant. 8 men. You know 3 of them from the bar. The other 5 study you in the specific way these men study someone new. Not hostile, just thorough. They are reading you the way you have been trained to read people, and the fact that you know exactly what they are doing does not make it any less effective. Someone asks about South Boston, a neighborhood, a bar. You answer without hesitating, because you know the bar. You have been there. Danny Moran has been going there since he was 19. Someone asks about a person, a name, connected to the waterfront. You say you know who they mean. You don't know him personally, you heard the name. The man who asks nods and moves on. Later you realize that name was a test. The person doesn't exist. If you had claimed to know him personally, you would have been finished that night. You passed without knowing you were being tested. That is the most dangerous kind of test. The ones you cannot see coming are the ones that end operations. You go home that night and sit in the kitchen for an hour. You are not scared. You are something else. You are sharp in a way that feels chemical, alive in a way that the other version of your life, the office, the paperwork, the supervisor's closed door, has never made you feel. You file your first debrief report the next morning. You do not include that last part. Level 5, inside. 14 months in, you are inside. Not officially. This organization does not issue membership cards, but you are present at the right conversations in the right rooms, and the men around you have stopped calculating your presence and started including it. You run errands, you move money in ways that are technically illegal and operationally valuable to your case. You are present at conversations that are going directly into recordings. You sit at tables where decisions are made that will eventually form the backbone of federal indictments. And you eat dinner with these men. And you watch their kids play in their front yards. And when Ray's wife gets sick, you sit with him in a hospital waiting room for 4 hours because he doesn't want to be alone, and there is nobody else he trusts enough to call. You sit with him for 4 hours. You hold a coffee cup that gets cold. You tell him it's going to be okay. You do not know if that is true. Every detail of that conversation goes into a report that your handler reads 2 days later in a government building 40 miles away. Ray never knows. Level 6. The ask. 2 years in, they ask you to do something, not a suggestion, not a request. A quiet expectation delivered in a tone that makes clear the expectation is non-negotiable. There is a man who owes money, not a large amount, symbolic, the kind of debt that is about respect rather than finance. Someone needs to go talk to him. They tell you to go talk to him. You know what talk to him means. You sit with it for 30 seconds that feel much longer. You have options. You could say you have somewhere to be. You could find a reason. But a reason right now, like at this specific moment after 2 years of earned trust, would cost more than you can afford to pay. You go. You knock on the door. The man answers. You talk to him. Not the way they meant. Enough that you come back and say it's handled. And the way you say it is convincing because you have spent 2 years learning exactly how these men talk about things being handled. That night, you sit in your car outside your apartment for 20 minutes. Your hands are steady. That is not a relief. That is the problem. Your hands should not be that steady. Level 7. The parking lot. Every 3 weeks, you meet your handler in the parking lot of a grocery store 40 miles from the operations territory. You leave your cover life at 9 in the morning and drive 40 miles, and for 90 minutes, you sit in a government car and debrief. Then you drive back. The first few months, these meetings felt like surfacing, coming up for air. Your real name in your handler's mouth felt like something you needed. By month 18, it feels like the opposite. You sit in the government car and you look at your handler and he is asking the right questions in the right order with a notepad and a recording device, and he is thorough and professional and completely outside the world you have been living in for 18 months. And something has shifted. You answer everything. You give him everything he needs. But when he asks how you are doing, you say fine and you mean it, and the fine you mean has nothing to do with him. He asks if you need a break. You say no. He asks if you are sure. You say yes. He writes something down. You watch him write it and you think, he is profiling me right now. He is reading me the way I was trained to read people. He thinks something is off. He is right. You are just very good at this now. Level 8. The blur. It happens on a Tuesday at lunch. You are at a table with Ray and 2 other men, and someone is telling a story about a situation that went wrong. And in the story, the person who created the problem is a federal informant. The table reacts the way this table always reacts to that information. You react with them. Not performed, not calculated. You just react. And 3 seconds later, you hear yourself and you sit with it quietly for the rest of lunch, and you smile at the right moments, and you leave at the right time, and you drive home, and you sit in the kitchen. You think about the informant in the story. And your first instinct? The genuine first instinct, the one that arrived before any professional calculation, was not sympathy. It was contempt. You made a call to a number you have memorized and said you needed to talk. Your handler met you in a parking lot that was not the scheduled parking lot. He listened. Then he said, "This is normal. This is what happens at this stage. You have not crossed a line." You asked him how he knew. He said because you called me. You drove home. You sat in the kitchen. You thought about what he said. You thought about the fact that the reason you called him had nothing to do with the investigation. You called him because you needed someone to tell you that you were still who you thought you were. Level 9. The night it almost ends. 3 years in, a late night, a bar that has closed to the public, 7 men, including you. A conversation that moves in a direction you did not anticipate. Someone has a name of a person they believe is feeding information to federal investigators. The name is wrong. It is not you. It is a man with no connection to anything. But the atmosphere in the room is the kind of atmosphere that does not require accuracy. You sit completely still. You know the procedure. If the cover is about to be blown, you make contact. If contact is not possible, you exit. You cannot exit. Because exiting in this moment, standing up and leaving this room, is confirmation. You would not make it to the door. So you sit and you say what Danny Moran would say. You say it in Danny Moran's voice with Danny Moran's certainty, and you say it in a way that shifts the temperature of the room by 3 degrees in the right direction. The conversation moves. The moment passes. An hour later, you are outside and your hands are finally not steady and you stand in the cold for a long time before you can make them stop. The man with the wrong name is fine. The investigation is intact. You are intact. You go home. You do not sleep. Level 10. The exit. The call comes from your supervisor on a Wednesday morning. He says, "We are pulling you out. We have enough. Extraction in 72 hours." 72 hours. You sit in Danny Moran's apartment looking at Danny Moran's things, and you have 72 hours left of a life you have been living for 5 years. You see Ray that night. You don't tell him. You sit across from him at a table in the restaurant where you have sat across from him dozens of times, and you look at him and you know what is coming, and he has no idea and you talk about nothing for 2 hours, and when you leave, he says, "See you Thursday?" You say, "Yeah." Thursday, you walk out. You don't look back because if you look back, you will not be able to keep moving. 72 hours later, you are in a debriefing room. A federal agent you have never met asks you to describe the key targets. You start talking. Halfway through the description of Ray, you stop. The agent waits. You start again. You give him everything he needs. Every name, every conversation, every meeting. 5 years of it. It takes 3 days. What comes after? You go home. Your apartment is exactly as you left it. Your real name on the lease. Your own things on the shelves. You stand in the doorway for a moment. Nothing in this apartment knows where you have been. You sit on the couch and turn on the television and some show is on that you don't recognize and you sit there watching it. Your hands are in your lap, completely still. That doesn't mean anything anymore. The return. Your first week back, your supervisor sends you home at noon on Tuesday. He says you look like you haven't slept. You haven't, not properly. Not in a way that feels like actual rest. The problem is silence. For 5 years, silence meant something. Silence in a room meant someone was deciding something. Silence after a question meant the question meant more than the words. Silence from a man like Ray meant you needed to pay attention. Now silence is just your apartment at 2 in the morning. And you don't know what to do with silence that means nothing. You go to the grocery store on Wednesday and stand in an aisle for 4 minutes because nobody is watching you. And you don't know how to move through a space when nobody is watching. You go to a bar on Friday night. Neighborhood place, nobody you know. You sit at the bar and the man next to you starts talking. Normal conversation. Work, weather, the game last night. Halfway through, you realize you are reading him. His hand position, his eye contact pattern, the specific way he holds his glass when he talks about his job versus when he talks about his wife. You are profiling a stranger at a bar on a Friday night because 5 years of operating inside a world where reading people kept you alive has made it completely involuntary. You finish your drink, you go home, you sit in the kitchen. For the first time in 5 years, you have nowhere to be and no one to be, and you are 36 years old, and you genuinely do not know what that feels like. Danny Moran would know what to do on a Friday night. You are not Danny Moran. You are just not completely sure yet who that leaves. The indictment. The indictments come down 18 months later. 23 people. Ray is number 7 on the list. You read it in a document you were not supposed to have access to, but someone sent you anyway. You read his name. You close the document. You sit in the kitchen for a long time. The operation was a success. That is what the commendation letter says. The operation was a success. You fold the letter. You put it in a drawer. You go to work because the job is still the job. And you are still mostly who you were before they closed that door and told you they thought it was you. Mostly.